next young lady, I met her some time ago, shortly after we got here, and fell in love with her immediately because I don't think you can have a better heart, sweeter spirit, or love Jesus any more than this young lady.
Or a stronger handshake.
Or she has a very strong handshake, yes. And she's a painting machine if you put a paintbrush in her hand. And she's got a heart of gold, constantly doing awesome things for other people. She thinks of others. Anybody who's put love God and love people into her life and her actions, it's this next intern. So I want you to welcome Miss Crystal Riley as she comes to preach.
Good afternoon, church. Thank you, pastors, for allowing me to preach on Sunday.
Yes.
Appreciate it. The thing I most struggled with on this message was what to title it. I liked the title, I Will Live, but I finally went with Break My Heart.
Yeah.
And you'll see why in a minute.
Oh, yeah.
So my topic today is compassion, and I'm going to start by reading you the definition of sympathy versus compassion. A lot of times they're confused or people use them interchangeably, but they're really not the same.
Come on.
So sympathy, the definition of sympathy is feelings of pity and sorrow for someone else's misfortune. And then the Webster's definition of compassion is sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. But I like the one that Compassion International uses better, and that is sympathetic consciousness of others' distress together with the desire to alleviate it.
Amen.
Good.
So there is a really good book I read on sympathy versus compassion. It's called Toxic Charity.
Wow.
And it teaches you how to help people without creating a helpless person. And a lot of times that's what we've done in society. We take people off the street or whatever and just hand them all the clothes, food, whatever they need. But we don't teach them how to get their life back on their feet and be able to be self-sustaining so that they're always dependent on us for food and clothing and shelter. So that is highly recommended reading if you have time. It's not a very long book, and it's called Toxic Charity. Okay, so then in the Bible, the word compassion is used 41 times.
Wow.
Not quite as much as not fear, but still several times. The only one I'm going to have you turn with me to is Matthew 9:36, and that's going to be the most familiar one to us. So Matthew 9:36. This one's New King James, and then the other two I'm going to read the Amplified version because I like the wording better. So Matthew 9:36. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them, because they were weary and scattered, like sheep having no shepherd. Okay, that's the one we're usually here. Another one I liked was Colossians 3:12, and it says, "Put on then, as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other. As the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive."
Amen.
And then I picked a third one, and that is 1 Peter 3:8. And it says, "Finally, all of you, live in harmony with one another. Be sympathetic, love as brothers, be compassionate and humble." And I thought what was interesting is that Colossians 3:12 puts compassion and forgiveness in the same verse together. I think a lot of times that has to go hand in hand. You can't feel compassion for someone if you can't forgive them.
Yes, that's true.
And then in 1 Peter 3:8, you find the word sympathetic and compassion in the same verse. So I thought that was interesting also. When about 6 years ago, I was a freshman in college, and I can't remember what preacher it was I was listening to as I drive back and forth to college. But I remember he kept saying, he was challenging us to pray, Lord, let the things that break your heart break mine.
Yeah.
And at first I thought, well, that's stupid. Why would I want somebody to break my heart? But it wouldn't leave me alone. I kept thinking about it all that day, and I was like, you know what? I'm just daring enough that I'm going to try it. So I started praying that. And I just said, Lord, let the things that break your heart break mine.
Good.
And I couldn't get away from it. I kept praying that. It just became part of my daily prayer life, that I would say that. And it was about 3 weeks later, I was walking from one class to the next, and I saw this college student sitting on a bench crying. And I didn't know her, total stranger to me, but my heart went out to her. And I admit that it was probably more sympathy than compassion at that point, but I went over to her and just kind of sat down beside her. I said, "Are you okay?" And she said no, and just started sobbing. And she had a whole story about things that were going on in her life. It was a mess. But I prayed with her that day and gave her a hug and went on to class. But I started having these encounters more and more frequently. The more I prayed that prayer, the more my eyes were open to people that my heart went out to.
Yeah.
And I just kept praying, Lord, let me have your compassion. Let me feel what you feel for them.
Yes.
And as some of you know, most of you know, I connected with the homeless man that Bill Lewis brought back from California last year.
Come on.
What most of you don't know is that I was also homeless at the time. And I lived that way from October of last year until March of this year.
Oh my goodness.
I lost my job and my place of residence in the same day back in October. And thankfully, thank you to Bill Lewis and Jane Howell, I was never without a job for more than 5 days. But I didn't make enough working one job to qualify to rent something. So I took a second job in February, and in March I finally made enough income to qualify to rent something. But that was a long 5 months.
Come on.
I survived most of the winter either bouncing from place to place. I landed a couple places and I would just take a shower and move on. A lot of the winter I spent living out of my truck. Everybody knows I drive that silver Expedition. It's a pretty large vehicle, but it's not very comfortable to sleep in.
I bet.
And there were times that I was sleeping in the parking lot of the car wash in St. Joe between work shifts. And I thought, man, if this car dies, I'm probably going to freeze to death walking somewhere. And a lot of times nobody knew where I was. I just go from one parking lot to the next. I got kicked out of the mall a few times trying to sleep on their couch in St. Joe. But it really opened my eyes to the plight of people who are in that situation.
Come on.
When I was in college, I took a speech class and my professor challenged us to take on a service project, something that we'd not done before. And I was widely involved in several volunteer activities already, so I was like, well, what else is there to do in St. Joe? And he said, have you ever gone to the food kitchen? I said, no, I had not served there. So I found out where the food kitchen was in St. Joe. I went down to 5th Street and served the homeless that day. It became something that I enjoyed doing and would frequently visit there and help serve whoever the church was for the day, to help them serve lunch while I was in college. Well, I found myself on the other side of the counter this winter, and I have to say it was very humbling to be the one being served.
Oh, man.
Wow.
There were other times that I didn't know if I was going to eat that day. There were some very generous church members that made sure I didn't starve, but a lot of times I was going 24, 48 hours without eating. And it was just very lonely.
Sure.
Come on.
but it also taught me to rely on God a lot more, to trust that He would take care of me no matter what. Like I said, I never froze, never starved. I survived it, and I'm stronger for it.
Yes.
But anyway, today the challenge I want to challenge everybody is to start praying that prayer. Would you be daring enough to pray with me? Lord, let the things that break your heart break mine.
Yeah.
And see what He opens your eyes to. There's a whole world out there that is hurting, that needs our compassion,
Yes.
our open arms. And most importantly, we need to love and forgive so that we can be open to those opportunities. That maybe He'll show us a drug addict under a bridge. Maybe He'll show us the homeless man standing on the corner who might be faking it, but he might not.
Come on.
And today I want to conclude with the song Power of Your Name by Lincoln Brewster. I was hoping to be able to play the YouTube version of this because somebody put pictures to it that really fit the song, and it makes it that much more powerful, but we couldn't get it to play here. So Jason's going to roll that on CD. I would sing it for you, but it's really too low for my voice to do it justice. So I sang this song every day for 4 years while I was in college, and it's really powerful. There's a lot of words to the song, and I encourage you just to focus on what he's saying, and Darlene Jack plays the backup on this. About 3 minutes into this song, you're going to hear the words, break my heart. He says, Lord, break my heart. But there's a lot of other powerful words in this song. It's about people on the streets, people with broken lives, broken homes. And he says, I will live to carry your compassion, to love a world that's broken. I want to be your hands and feet, talking about Jesus.
Amen.
I want to live a life that lives to, try not to sing, carry your compassion. And then it says, Lord, break my heart, that we may go beyond religion
Come on.
Yes, amen.
to love a world that's broken.
Amen.
Amen.
Jason, would you roll that, please?
Amen. Amen.